Hello, my name is Julissa White. I am a graduate student enrolled at Full Sail University working on my master's in internet marketing. The purpose of this presentation is to explain what the Can-Spam Act is and its legal requirements, why spam is not free speech, and why certain act violators should have criminal liability. Afterwards, I'll present a few examples of how my case study company Antarctic Press could market spam in accordance with this act. This act outlines a set of rules and penalties for all commercial emails, which are messages sent for the purpose of advertisement or for promotion of any goods, services, or web content, to former consumers, subscribers, or otherwise. This act also explains the differences between what is accepted as commercial, transactional, or relationship message, which I'll go over later, who is responsible for the following act requirements, and who must accept any necessary penalty in the case of multiple email senders. Also, all the requirements of the Can-Spam Act I explained in this presentation is information provided by the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC for short. So the first requirement of this act disallows any false or misleading header information. This includes routing information and sender information, the name and email address of the person or business who is or are the senders. There should also be no deceptive subject lines. So if the email is a commercial message, or mostly commercial, which is inclined to follow the rules of the act, the advertising or promotional intent of the email should be stated clearly in the subject line. The commercial intent of an email should be clear in the message as well. It's possible that a message can have both commercial and transactional intent, meaning it's related to sales, or relationship intent, a non-promotional or transactional message concerning miscellaneous topics like hiring, visitor, client questions, and etc. However, if the subject line would lead the recipient to think it's a commercial message, or the bulk of the transactional or relationship part of the message doesn't appear at the beginning, it's a commercial message under the Can-Spam Act. And no worries, I'll give more detailed definitions with examples about each type of intent when I discuss my case study company strategy. So number 4, the sender must include a current and accurate physical postal address in the message. This may include a street address, post office box registered with the U.S. Postal Office, or a commercial registered private mailbox following Postal Service regulations. The message must also include an opt-out option for recipients to be able to choose if they want to stop receiving messages from the sender. This opt-out option can be made possible by providing an email address or other link to an opt-out form. It can also be made creatively in terms of color, text, menu options, or other design, but overall it must be clearly visible to the recipient. Opt-outs must be able to be processed within 30 days after a sent message and should be carried out within 10 business days. The sender should not be charged any fee or be required to provide any other personally identifying information just to be able to opt out. Opted-out emails can also not be transferred to any third party or mailing list. Senders may only transfer emails to those hired to help them comply with the Can-Spam Act. Now there is a 7th condition, but I'll review that in a moment along with more details on how the Can-Spam Act designates the sender of a commercial message who is required to follow its conditions, as well as who is deemed responsible for receiving any necessary penalty. But first, let's quickly review the Act's requirements for commercial messages concerning sexually explicit content. The phrase sexually explicit must be at the beginning of the subject line, and the rest of the message should follow the requirements of the electronic version of a brown paper wrapper, the term the Federal Trade Commission uses when regulating messages of such content. These specific requirements state that the phrase sexually explicit must also be in the body of the message. No graphics are allowed within the wrapper of the message, and the email must also follow the rest of the Act's written requirements. The only case when senders do not need to follow the brown paper wrapper is when the recipient has already given affirmative consent to receive sexually oriented messages. Also, even if the message is not mostly commercial, although it does not have to follow the rest of the Can-Spam Act requirements, if there is sexual content, it should still follow these rules. Now back to the final act requirement, which states that both the person or company whose goods or services are promoted in a commercial email and anyone hired to send the email are held legally responsible to follow the Can-Spam Act. Also, the seller of promoted goods or services is likely to be liable if they pay for forwarded messages. This includes any situation where the seller pays or offers any benefits to someone like money, coupons, discounts, awards, additional entries in sweepstakes, or otherwise for forwarding their message or in exchange for generating traffic to a website or any form of referral. So ultimately, what qualifies a sender is whoever's goods or services are promoted in the message, whoever's name and email is identified in the sender line, whoever follows the act requirements, and whoever offers the recipient something in exchange for forwarding their message. Those who violate any part of the Can-Spam Act may have civil or criminal liability. For civil liability, designated senders may be expected to pay fines up to $40,654. Criminal liability includes imprisonment and applies to those who access the computer of someone who has not provided their email to send spam, generate emails outside of the sender's mailing list through dictionary attack, the practice of sending emails to addresses made up of random letters and numbers in the hope of reaching valid ones, or those who use any method allowing someone to continue sending spam to confuse a recipient about the identity of the true sender, or causes them to have to block more than one email from essentially the same origin, like by using false information to register for multiple accounts or domain names, relaying or transmitting multiple spam messages through a computer, taking advantage of open relays, servers that forge email addresses, or open proxies, servers that hide the sender's true IP address without permission. Now, there's a lot of talk you can find in online forums and news articles about cases where spammers seek protection from CAN-SPAM Act penalties under the First Amendment's right to free speech. I'll explain why I personally do not believe spammers who go as far as to violate the Constitutional Act just to try to promote themselves or others should be given such protection in just a moment. But first, allow me to explain a few examples of the only reason why I agree that some anti-spam violators should not have to be penalized. Anti-spam legislation varies state to state. Therefore, some who may violate the CAN-SPAM Act are not penalized due to the way some state spam laws are written and deemed unconstitutional. This is because the CAN-SPAM Act, as well as other national laws, preempts or supersedes existing anti-spam laws. For example, in 1996, Georgia's spam law was deemed unconstitutional in a case with the American Civil Liberties Union because its prohibition of the use of trademark logos or copyright symbols without permission also restricted the use of web links to trademarks or copyrighted content. However, such links are actually allowed under the United States copyright and trademark law as long as the link to the holder of the trademark or copyright is clear. In the end, Georgia ruled that their law was indeed too vague and broad. There is also a case where Virginia's spam law was deemed unconstitutional because their ban on using false routing information to disguise sender identity was not written to apply only to commercial emails, which the CAN-SPAM Act requires. Outside of such conditions, when state spam laws don't comply completely with the CAN-SPAM Act, then my final opinion stands that spam is not free speech. In fact, in their Is Spam Free Speech article, the University of Florida states that commercial speech is less protected than other forms of speech. Needing to obtain someone's information to say something crosses a line of privacy. For example, direct marketing through door-to-door sales or sending mail to people's homes from addresses found in public forums, like a public website or in the Yellow Pages, is different from obtaining information normally kept private so people can prevent something like cold calls or spam. The CAN-SPAM Act and constitutional state spam laws don't violate free speech because, as the Coalition Against Unsolicited Emails said, free speech doesn't guarantee someone's right to force others to hear their message. In other words, if someone does not want to listen, they should not have to. Blocking senders is a recipient's free act not to violate free speech, but to opt not to listen. Penalizing those who disguise their true intentions or obtain emails from others without permission is an acceptable protection of privacy. With this in mind, people who cross this line of privacy just to send spam, I believe, should have criminal liability. The CAN-SPAM Act is regulatory, not prohibitory. Its purpose is in its title. It does not prevent spam completely, but requires senders to make their message clear and with a recipient opt-out option. However, actual criminal acts performed to send spam are subject to criminal liability. Criminal liability should continue to apply to serious crimes like violating privacy, illegally obtaining information, or damaging personal property. For instance, the Act penalizes senders who access someone's computer for their information or randomly generates emails to send their commercial messages without consent. And according to Grant Gross's article, U.S. Law Enforcement Expect More Spam Prosecutions, Mona Spivak of the U.S. Department of Justice said in 2007 that the department was going to start pegging botnet spammers with some criminal liability. Botnet spammers use internet-connected devices infected and controlled by a common type of malware, which does actual damage to someone's personal device. Lastly, criminal liability should also apply to those guilty of phishing, which is the act of emailing a link to a fake page created to look like a real organization's website, which can trick visitors into submitting their private information to a fraud. Now that we are finally done explaining the basic requirements of the CAN-SPAM Act and a couple arguments about it, allow me to introduce my case study company to you. Antarctic Press, or AP for short, is a low-tier publisher of multiple styles and genres of creator-owned comics founded in San Antonio, Texas in 1984 by comic creator Ben Dunn. Their mission is to support and publish original works of budding talented creators who desire a place to start making a name for themselves in the competitive world of comic publishing. AP markets to a tech-savvy and creatively engaged community of people known in the arts and entertainment industry as geeks, who can vary in every demographic classification category. However, the mature themes of many of AP's comics narrow their audience further down to teens and adults. Considering their founding year, this age range can include millennials from Generation Y, 1980 to 1994, and Generation Z, 1995 to 2005. So before I give some examples of how AP spam messages marketing comic goods could look in order to comply with the requirements of the CAN-SPAM Act, I'll give you a bit more of an explanation of what the differences are between spam message content. Now, the CAN-SPAM Act only applies to commercial messages, which are those emails promoting any goods or services or website content. However, there are messages not subject to comply with the Act's requirements depending on how much of the message can actually be considered commercial. In the case that it is clear that most of the message has commercial intent, then its subject line should also clearly show the same intent. It should go without saying that the rest of the message should follow all of the Act's other requirements as well. Transactional messages, on the other hand, can be any notice or updates about sale or non-sale transactions like newsletter subscriptions. A message may also be considered mostly transactional if a brief commercial portion is at the end of the message. What applies as a relationship message under the CAN-SPAM Act are non-promotional or transactional messages like replies and information about hiring, submissions, or the company in general. A message may still be considered mostly relational, once again, if a brief commercial portion is at the end of the message. Before we start, let me quickly say that these are not full email examples. They only show subject line, sender, recipient, and the body of the message. Some email message platforms like Gmail include two opt-out options, one in the closing and one next to the sender's email like shown. Although these examples do not show closing information like the sender's address and website like what is required of the CAN-SPAM Act for commercial messages, and really should just be included in any professional business message. It is intended that the actual AP emails in this marketing strategy include such important information along with that additional opt-out option. In addition, these emails do not include any images or added attachments, which I will suggest as we review each one. Some statements are bolded only to highlight the message's intent, and it is not intended to be bolded in the actual email so as to not be too distracting or provoking to the reader and text without graphics. Lastly, each message has a fake email, fake name, and fake information besides any creator names, employee names, and emails and comics mentioned. So in our first spam example for AP, both the message and subject line are completely promotional. Our subject line markets a sale, 15% off comics till February 14th. Love yourself this Valentine's. Our message to Leffy Taft describes the sale in more detail, stating, "Hey there, Leffy. Antarctic Press has a new line of fresh color comics out this February. Perfect to enjoy alone, with your friend, partner, or furry friend this Valentine's." Fred Perry's latest issue of Gold Digger is out with a bit of a Star Wars kick, and an old favorite, Arya, returns to our shelves with a fresh look, and several others are ready and waiting for a good read. Plus, our low prices just got better with an extra 15% off available for you just until the holiday. So what are you waiting for? The sale only lasts till February 14th. Start browsing now. As an extra note, I just want to say that if this were a legitimate commercial message, it should have some visual appeal to really sell AP's promotion to the recipient. It should include something like a banner graphic of the Valentine's Day sale comics with large text headlining the sale, which can be linked to AP's homepage with a similar style banner. There should also be pictures of any suggested products in the message, which could also be linked to their product pages on AP's online store before closing information on the email. After all, for comic fans, visuals are always more appealing than just plain text. This example is intended to be sent to consumers with small orders only during the early stages of AP promotions. This way, the space left over from not listing too many items in the order can be used for promotional efforts and may help to persuade those who make small purchases to return to the store for more. The reason why it is only intended to send such messages at the start of a large promotion is to help raise awareness quickly through different platforms. Also, to prevent consumers from being annoyed from reading a similar message more than once, 2 different email forms for promotions should be made. One for those with orders for more than 2 items before the start of a promotion who have yet to receive confirmation, like this message here, and one for the remainder of people in AP's mailing list, like the message in our next example. And since this message is mostly commercial, like the Act states, its subject line should show that intent clearly as well. The subject reads, "Antarctic Press Order 8008341 is ready and we have 15% off comics till February 14th. Our second version of the same promotional message to Leffy Taft reads, "Thank you, Leffy Taft. Your order for 1 printed copy of Gao No. 1 has been processed and ships to 1-800 Lemon Street, Rosefield, California, 66941 in 3 days." After this line would be a good place for AP to place an order graphic, a visual image of the items ordered along with the customer's payment information, billing summary, and selected shipping method. An order graphic is a lot easier to read than simple text in a confirmation message. The rest of our message reads, "And if you're interested in more, Antarctic Press has a new line of fresh color comics out this February. Perfect to enjoy alone, with your friend, partner, or furry friend this Valentine's. Plus, these newbies have an extra 15% off available for you just until the holiday. So what are you waiting for? If you place your order for one before your ship date, we will make sure you get your Valentine's special together with your current order. But if you're late, no worries. The sale lasts until February 14th. So even with our graphic added, we would still only have about 2 lines of transactional intent. Most of this message has lines about a promotion, even when some of it mixes with the transactional message when I state that an order placed before the ship date could be combined with Levy's previous order. Before moving on, just so you know, there is no commercial message with some relationship intent. One reason for this is because the nature of relational messages can be written in a way to show little commercial intent. I'll give you a few examples of what I mean in a moment. But thanks to this sort of writing style, the other reason for this is because relational messages should hope to preserve email contacts. If they have too much commercial intent, that would mean AP would be required to give the recipient an opt-out option and risk losing a potential sale or non-sale converter who may not visit the company's sites on their own without email reminders of AP's content. As I mentioned before, this order confirmation is missing a few elements, which could be formed in a graphic table. But let's go ahead and move on to the actual message. The subject is purely transactional, stating Antarctic Press Order 8675309 is ready. Our message to Kate Kat reads, "Thank you, Kate Kat. Your order for Aria number 2 has been processed and ships to 1-800 Lemon Street, Rosefield, California, 66941 in 3 days. If you ever want more, come check out our fresh new color comics out on sale till February 14th. Now, if you remembered what I said before about a mostly transactional message, this example should have a bigger transactional portion before the commercial piece at the end. So in order to assure this does not have to fall under the Can-Spam Act requirements, our extra order confirmation graphic is going to be placed in the middle, so the commercial information is still at the end. From here on, my final AP spam examples have relationship intent, meaning they are neither commercially written for promotion or have transaction-related content. Although each message may have a brief line to promote AP content, like I just said, as long as that brief commercial portion is at the end of the message, it does not need to follow Can-Spam Act requirements, as long as there's no sexual content, of course. Our first subject line with no commercial intent states, "Congratulations are in order. Antarctic Press loves animal friends." Our message to Arnold Joy reads, "Congratulations, Arnold. Your Animal Friends comic has gone through full review, and Antarctic Press would love to publish and promote your work. Attached are all the details and suggestions we ask you to make before your second editing submission. Please review them before we move on. Also, if you're at all curious about the quality of our color comics, like what you have submitted, please check out some of our previews on our website, like Johnny Crowther and Del Barris' Rochelle, and Rod Espinoza and Carlos San Juan's Immortal Wings No. 1. For any other assistance you need, please contact our submissions editor, David Hutchison, at any time. Thank you again for a great submission." Now, most of this message is clearly relational, and the commercial bit at the end is a comic promotion mixed in with the same intent as the rest of the message. Our next subject line states, "Got your message, Milk?" Our message to Milk Dud reads, "Nice to meet you, Milk. Just to let you know, we have received your message about our online subscriptions and will be answering you properly and fully in the next few days. Doug Glynn, our office manager, will be replying to you as soon as he can. Thank you for your interest in us and your patience. In the meantime, if you want to see our monthly updates, please visit our site to sign up for our newsletter." Once again, there is only one commercial line at the end of the message, and everything else, even the subject line, only has relational intent. The setup of this message is also an example of another strategy I would like to recommend for AP to use for messages like this one in particular. If AP ever plans to take more time to answer someone's questions if they cannot do so promptly, this message shows how to let them know in a timely manner that someone's question was indeed received and will be answered momentarily. This way, for answers that do take time, those with questions don't have to feel like they are being ignored during their wait. Now, AP may have a Facebook Messenger page set up on their online store for any visitor or consumer questions, but they do not have a topic selector in this platform. Some site message forms allow you to pick a topic that your message mostly concerns in order to set up a conversation with you and their most helpful employee according to their job description. So if I had a question under the topic job application, my message would most likely be answered by human resources, a hiring manager, or a possible advisor. However, without that topic option, AP will have to read the full question in order to briefly describe it in this "we'll get back to you soon" type of response. Our last subject line states, "Antarctic Press got your newsletter subscription." Our message to Niesel reads, "Hello, Niesel. Thank you for subscribing to the Antarctic Press newsletter. We send one of these babies out once a month, and they include exclusive previews, creator sketches and notes, and some photos of our staff hard at work. As thanks for your subscription, in addition to this next upcoming newsletter, we are also sending you our last one as well. And of course, if you ever want to buy any of the products featured in our newsletter, they are always available in our online store. Thanks again for checking us out." Although it may sound promotional, this does not count as a commercial message because it is similar to an order confirmation reply, but for a newsletter subscription. Once again, only one line at the end has commercial intent. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. This is a list of resources I used in this presentation, and following it are my references. This is goodbye, so have a good day or night.